Good morning, ladies. I am Karen Ray. I am the founder here at Fave Lifestyles and just want to welcome you all. And as I get the lipstick off my teeth, well, good morning. Life is not always perfect, but here we are. It is early. Oh, sorry, girls. I really do have a lipstick on my teeth there as I can see it. We are here today with Shirkydra Roberts coming from Virginia. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And welcome. We are going to be taking a little peek into your story today and what that looks like to write a story and why we are wanting to share it, because that is the essence of your story is really coming together. And, we have these stories and what that's going to look like and why share it and all those kinds of good things. So I'm so glad that you shared your story here at Faith and what that's going to look like. And so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I look forward to having this conversation and just encouraging other people to come forth and tell their story. We all have a gift in it.
Absolutely. So I want to just take a moment and share your bio because, wow, I was reading this. I'm like, you've really done a few things in life and just want to share that with the ladies. So Shirkydra is the founder and CEO of Impact Aspire Motivate Enterprises, known as IAME. She was born February 10th, 1990, raised in a single family home with her mother and two siblings in Dallas, Texas. She has a BA in psychology and currently working towards a master's in clinical mental health counseling. Oh my goodness, that is so needed in today's world. She's an active duty engineering officer with 15 years of service in the United States Navy. Yes, thank you. And when not in uniform, she is an evangelist, motivational speaker, life transformation coach, podcaster, #MeToo advocate, and 3 times published author. Oh my goodness. To date, she has coached over 10 new authors across the globe. And in 2015, she published her first book, poems called What's a Word Worth? She started IAME in 2018, which has become her platform as a speaker and coach. In 2019, she published her second book called Just Wrap It Up, which focuses on the gifts that we all have within us that we overlook due to pain, struggles, challenges, and lack of self-confidence. In 2021, she started her own podcast titled Beyond the Vision. Recently published her latest book called Dear Brain, You Have My Attention, Going Beyond a Healed Heart in April of 2023. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow, that is so amazing. Thank you for doing all those things because you are bringing women together in so many different ways. And just want to applaud you for stepping out and doing some amazing things. So tell us a little bit about life in Virginia. What are some of the things that you currently are excited about?
I'm excited. So right now I'm working on publishing my 4th publishing, which is going to be a journal, because what I'm learning, even in the clinical mental health space, is everybody's not ready for therapy. Everybody's not ready to peel back those layers and talk about those wounds. And so a lot of times you open up a journal and it's like blank pages. So me going through my own CBT process when I was healing is I took a lot of those common questions so that you can ask yourself those questions at home in those 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes that you're spending journaling and in your prayer time or just your meditation time. You can journal and have a guide. And then that should prepare you for your first day of therapy. So just excited to get a journal out there to help people get prepared for therapy versus you walk into your first therapy session. It's like them looking at you and you looking at them. And then it's like, I'm not going back.
Yeah, because you don't know what to expect.
Exactly. Yes. And a lot of those like failed therapy attempts sometimes stops the healing process. And so if I can implement something to help that continue to move to the right, that's what I'm kind of planning to do while I'm here in Virginia and really supporting the community, like wherever I'm called on, I'm willing to go. That's the evangelism in me. If God say go, we're going to do it.
Yes, which leads us to your story, actually,
Yeah.
because the main thing about your story, which is called Trauma into Treasure, shares how life's toughest moments become your stepping stones to something greater, transforming pain into purpose. That is so much about what the fave mission here is
Mhm.
taking those stories and sharing them. And so, so just give us a little kind of brief recap of what your story is about.
So my story, a lot of it deals with my childhood trauma, which I was sexually abused as a child for many years. So I dealt with incest, and then of course that started the suicidal ideations and attempt. I became a cutter, and when I was in high school as a teen, and then I didn't really say anything, didn't tell anybody until I was the age of 25. So I struggled with my identity, I struggled with sexuality, I struggled with who I'm supposed to be. I dealt with that built the imposter syndrome, the approval addiction. You get so many things once that trauma happens, church hurt. You just, so many layers to it. And I eventually got to a place where I couldn't sleep at night. I was going everywhere feeling paranoid. And it was like, okay, I have to choose something different.
Oh, so in that, so you've got this story that's very heavy, very, you're carrying a lot of weight around with you. And I think you mentioned that in your story too, is that the weight of the story. And so what really prompted you to go, I've got to share my story?
To be honest, it was my walk with Christ. I was saved at the age of 20. And as I'm reading, it was like when I was going to like testimony services, I was living in Japan for 6 years and telling my story. And I'm like, the stories that I was reading about was changing me. And I'm like, what if my story could change other people if I look at it from a different light, not just being the victim in the moment, but saying, like, I'm on the other side of this too. And so it was like the stories I was reading was changing me. So what could my story do?
Yes. And as we were talking earlier, before we went live too, you were mentioning something about sometimes we hear somebody's story and that
Yes,
stops. And
yes.
they don't tell us this part
Mhm.
of it, that
Yes,
hope and
yes,
the inspiration. That's what you were just referring
yes.
to, is that, maybe my story could change somebody or inspire somebody. So tell us a little bit more about that inspiration.
I was going to conferences where it was like, we know what conferences are for survivors. And you go and I would get into different groups or go to different location. It was like you get the story and then it's like you leave just with the weight. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I feel their pain, I feel my pain, but then it was nothing after that. And it's like, well, we don't have to be left in the dumps after telling our story all the time. So I found myself like, no, I want to show you how I eventually told my family. And I actually talked to my abusers and said, hey, I forgive you and release you. And I believe that God's going to do the same. Hey, now I want to use my story to actually share hope and love and faith with people instead of just saying, hey, yes, I was a victim. And it takes healing process, I think, is forever and ongoing. I don't think there's a finish line to it. But I believe that we get to different stages where the crying, where the depression, where the anxiety, where the paranoia, where, the identity crisis, all those things start to
Yeah.
kind of simmer down. And it was just like, I want to show people that there's life on the other side of this thing. We don't have to live in fear for the rest of our life because somebody chose to make us a victim.
Oh my gosh. Boop. Mic drop. Yes. Okay. So that was fabulous. So when you were, you decided to share your story. So we're even talking about the first time you've done, because you've shared your story many times, and Fave is just one of them. And so when you were that first time when you were up on the stage or where you were sharing it, what were some of the feelings going through your heart at that time? Do you
I
remember?
was I was scared because I was in Japan and I told you my first book was a poetry book. So I came out through poetry first.
Oh, okay.
And I'm on stage doing poetry and I'm like, what if somebody records me and my mom hears it? What if it gets back to some because I haven't told anyone yet. So I was opening up to strangers first, which is common. A lot of families don't realize that kids, even women and men, tend to open up to strangers first. And so a lot of people knew of my story before my own family did. And that was my biggest fear when I was speaking is, what if this gets back to my family before I could tell them?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is a common fear with the stories. It's like, they women want to share their story to inspire others, but there's that fear of backlash, or
Yes.
how is it going to be received with those people closest to me?
Yes, because those are the people who don't receive it well all the time, especially
Mhm.
when it's people that they trusted. A lot of times, I tell people the world teaches us to fear strangers and be on alert for strangers, but nobody teaches us that we also sometimes have to be on alert of those
Yeah.
people that have been entrusted into our safe space and our environments, because that's commonly where the abuse is coming from.
So were you, when closer people found out, were you questioned? Did that take some time for them to accept? What are your feelings towards that today?
Yes, when I first told, it was almost like you recut the wound because it's like,
Oh,
well, why won't you just take my story? Why don't you just take what I'm saying? There was some mixed emotions around it, but I think by that time, because I was 25 and God saved me at 20, I had gained some wisdom to know I'm telling to release and not for a response. And I challenge people now that, hey, when you're ready to talk, when you're ready to express yourself, do it to release. Because if you do it for a response and the people don't respond the right way, it could trigger you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's also one thing that I always want to tell women, that you have to be ready. You have to be in that space where you are whole and healthy, that you can share your story, and to encourage women, if they aren't there yet, to seek professional help, because we never want anyone to open up some wounds that are traumatic. And
Yes.
sometimes it takes actually people to help us walk through that story, so we can see the lessons or the inspirations for ourselves, or the healing that comes with that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you said you had gained some wisdom
Yes.
by the time you came to share your story. And I will say, as I was reading your story last night, I actually got goosebumps, because there are these little pieces of wisdom throughout your story. I like to mention to the ladies too, that the way we are sharing the stories here at Fave, it's not so much about the circumstances. We don't go into the nitty gritty of the circumstance. It's what we have gotten out and what we experienced during that time of walking through and sharing the story is really what it's about. So as we talk about that, what do you think was one of the biggest surprises coming out of sharing your story? One of the biggest benefits or surprises that you need to go, wow, I didn't expect that.
Freedom.
Oh,
When you don't realize it, because when you think about it, what keeps us from talking? All of the presumptions and assumptions that we have, what people might say, what people might think, what's going to happen. And when you say it and realize nothing of what kept me silent should have kept me silent, then it's like a little relief. Like, even with the mixed emotions and the responses, for me, I felt I don't have a secret anymore. I could talk. I have a voice, and it's okay. Nobody died.
wow, wow, wow. And you also talk a little bit about too, about sharing your story, like that first experience. You mentioned some women came up to you, and what
Yes.
did they do?
I was at a conference. Like I said, I was in a conference in Japan, and I went up to tell my story. And after that, it was like 30 plus women that came up to the mics to share that this was the first time they ever said something. And it was because I went up there to speak. And when I saw that, I was like, got it, God. It was amazing because these women, there was some in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. It's a big women's conference for our church. And to see that after I spoke up, that other women came and felt comfortable to do the same, I knew, like, hey, this is it. This is part of ministry.
Absolutely. It's giving other women permission to share their stories and to know that it's okay. And which you had mentioned earlier, as we were talking before we turned on the mic today too, it gives women a voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you
Tell us.
realize a lot of women are still trying to find it because it's not always okay. In some households, in some
Yeah.
families, it's like what goes on stays here, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think it's a beautiful feeling when we do have now these conferences, these public places where people can feel safe and feel like, hey, until you find your voice, I'll help. We're going to be that voice for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, beautifully said. And you mentioned something too, a safe space. It
Yes.
does need to be in a space where you feel safe, you feel comfortable. And that's why it was so important for us to kind of help women lead them through their story. So we could really focus on those beautiful pieces of what we've learned and maybe tap into your wisdom because, boy, ladies, when you read Shirkydra's story, there is these little golden nuggets of wisdom that have come out. And so I'm just going to read one of them as I'm looking here. We asked the women, how has this experience shaped your identity or sense of self? And you wrote, I've learned to separate what happened to me from who I want to be.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned too that this has helped you create a bigger why. And what is that?
To me, it's realizing that this experience happened, but now I can use the experience for the greater good to teach people faith, love, and hope and spread the character of God. Or I can continue to spread what I felt in the situation, which was depression and fear and anxiety and self doubt. I can stay in the moment and carry those feelings and spread that energy, or I can spread a different type of energy around the world to teach other people that your parable and your story does have hope, faith, and love a part of it.
Yeah. And then you can include so many more people in that love and open your heart up. It is amazing. Like you said, it gives you freedom. There's a
Yes.
healing process that comes and gives permission to other women to share their stories. And look how we can connect through that. You met 31 women that first night.
Yes.
And I bet they all connected to a different piece of your
Yes.
story.
And
And,
you see a smile because our story, kind of like what you were saying, if you just tell the story all the time, it's like it's going to cause some tears and some frowns and sometimes anger. But I try to always, I'm gonna spend a little time giving you the gist of what happened, but I'd rather focus on the what's next. Only because like I want you to leave here with joy, with a smile, with hope. Like we don't have to leave or live in constant state of feeling drained.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's
And
what we commonly see in this area.
yeah, and then we can connect through those things
Yes.
too. So,
Mhm,
oh my
mhm.
goodness. So as we close out here, what words of hope or inspiration would you like to leave with the ladies?
What I would like to share with the ladies and just people that's watching is your silence can be the one thing that's stopping you from reaching your full potential. Is writing your story, telling your story, sharing your story is not just healing for those that are around you, it's a part of our healing as well.
Uh, So many beautiful things. Ladies, we encourage you to share your story. You can still do that here at Fave Lifestyles. And you can go to www.favelifestyles.app. And there's a little place to submit your story and we'll help you write it. It's a safe space. Or go be inspired and with the stories that are coming out and looking forward, Shirkydra, to sharing your story on a bigger platform as our book comes out in December. And thank you for being with us today and sharing a bit of your heart. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us and for what you're doing over there at Fave. I'm excited just for December and to see the finished product and meet everybody else.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, ladies, go have a fabulous day and love ya.